It's Donald Trump's 1987 book,
Right.
The Art of the Deal.
Yeah.
And, you're wondering how the business philosophies
Yeah.
that are in this book might actually give us a clearer picture of, his future tariff policies and ultimately the outcomes he's aiming for in trade.
So
let's really kind of dig into this. And,
to break it down.
This is a book that was co-authored with Tony Schwartz.
Right.
And it's more than just a business memoir. I mean, this is really a foundational text for understanding, I think, a certain approach to negotiation and deal-making that has clearly influenced Donald Trump throughout his career.
For sure.
And its bestseller status back in 87, also, significantly. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, public image.
It's a fascinating blend, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's part personal story, walking us through his early life and career, from his beginnings in Brooklyn real estate to those iconic Manhattan projects like Trump Tower and the Grand Hyatt, but woven through it all is this very distinct philosophy on how to make deals.
Absolutely. And I think the context of 1987 is crucial here.
Oh, for sure.
Manhattan real estate was booming, fueled by the economic policies of the Reagan era.
Right.
And simultaneously, the U.S. faced significant international economic dynamics, particularly competition with Japan, all within the backdrop of, the tail end of the Cold War.
So our mission today, is, as you've set it out for us, is to really dissect those core deal-making principles Trump lays out in The Art of the Deal and see how they might inform his approach to tariffs and the
broader landscape of international trade today.
Sure.
So what are some of those fundamental ideas that he emphasizes?
Well, one of the first and most prominent is this idea of think big.
Okay.
And it's not just about having large-scale ambitions, right? It's about setting incredibly lofty goals right from the outset of a negotiation.
Yeah.
This principle isn't just about the size of the ask, but also about shaping the perception of what's possible in the negotiation.
Yeah.
By starting incredibly high, even a significant concession can feel like a win for the other side.
Interesting.
In the context of tariffs, could we see this translate to initial proposals that seem almost extreme?
That's a really interesting point.
Right.
It's not just about getting the big win, but perhaps about framing the whole negotiation around a higher initial point.
That's another principle that comes up is apply pressure.
Right.
How did that manifest in his deals back then? And how might we see that play out with tariffs?
So in the book, Trump details using various forms of pressure, time constraints, financial leverage, even public statements to push the other party towards his desired outcome. He aimed to create a sense of urgency or risk for his counterpart.
Sure.
When we look at tariffs, we've seen this play out with the imposition of duties on specific goods. Creating immediate economic pressure on the exporting country.
Okay.
This can be seen as a tactic to force quicker concessions in trade negotiations.
Yeah.
What kinds of specific pressure tactics do you think might be most effective?
It makes you wonder about the role of public pronouncements as a form of pressure in trade.
That's right.
We've certainly seen how strong rhetoric can be used to try and influence the other side.
For sure.
Another key idea from the book is maintaining a strong stance.
Right.
What's the nuance there?
So the book emphasizes projecting an image of unwavering strength and a reluctance to be perceived as yielding.
Right.
It's about deterring opponents and setting the tone for the negotiation. Now, in some negotiations, projecting unwavering strength can be a successful tactic to deter aggressive demands from the other side.
Interesting.
Are there examples in the book where this rigidity paid off?
Yeah.
And under what trade scenarios might a similar approach be effective or counterproductive?
Yeah.
In the context of tariffs, this might manifest as a resistance to back down from initially imposed duties, even in the face of potential retaliation.
That certainly aligns with a certain image he has cultivated.
Yeah.
It suggests that once a tariff is in place, for example, it might be very difficult to get it removed without significant concessions in return.
That's right.
Finally, he talks about protection mechanisms.
Okay.
What did he mean by that in his deals?
So by protection mechanisms,
yeah,
Trump meant having ways to limit his downside risk.
Okay.
Even while aiming for big wins.
Right.
He always considered exit strategies or ways to ensure a return on investment, even if the deal didn't go perfectly. In a trade context, this could involve things like safeguard measures, which allow a country to temporarily restrict imports to protect the domestic industry from serious injury.
Sure.
We might also see a focus on ensuring that trade agreements have clauses that allow for easy withdrawal or the imposition of conditions that protect domestic industries.
What specific industries do you think might be the target of such protectionist measures in future trade policies?
That's a great question.
So to get a better sense of how these principles operated in practice, the book gives us some key examples.
Sure.
The Grand Hyatt Hotel deal, where he secured significant government support and land, really stands out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That episode highlights his willingness to engage with and leverage government entities to achieve his goals.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about private sector negotiations. It was about understanding and utilizing the levers of power. This could certainly inform his approach to trade, where governments are inherently key players.
And then there's the development at Trump Tower, this high-profile luxury project.
Yes.
The book emphasizes the ambition and scale of that venture, and it even mentions the substantial commissions he earned just from apartment sales.
That illustrates his focus on maximizing opportunities in a favorable market.
Yeah.
It speaks to that think big mentality and a keen awareness of market dynamics in terms of tariffs. This ambition for large-scale success might translate into seeking trade deals that are perceived as hugely beneficial for the U.S., even if they require aggressive tactics to achieve.
He also stresses the importance of being involved in the details. Like personally choosing the marble flooring to save millions.
Yeah.
That seems almost contradictory to the think big idea, getting down to such a granular level.
But what's fascinating here is that it shows a focus on both the grand vision and the practical execution. The apply pressure principle wasn't just about high-level strategy. It was also about leveraging cost savings at a micro level to strengthen his overall position.
Interesting.
In trade.
Yeah.
This might translate to a very hands-on approach. Potentially even involving specific tariffs on particular goods to achieve a broader economic objective.
So connecting this all to potential tariff policies and desired outcomes, given the think big principle, we might anticipate initial tariff proposals that are deliberately very high.
Yeah.
What kind of psychological impact might that have on negotiating partners?
Well, it could certainly serve to anchor the negotiation at a higher level, as we discussed. It might also create a sense of urgency for the other party to negotiate downwards from what could be perceived as an extreme starting point. However, it also carries the risk of alienating negotiating partners and potentially leading to a breakdown in talks if the initial demands are seen as unreasonable or non-negotiable.
And how might the applying pressure tactic specifically manifest in the realm of tariffs beyond just imposing them?
Well, we might see the threat of additional tariffs being used as leverage. Or the setting of very firm deadlines for trade negotiations with the implication that tariffs will be imposed or increased if those deadlines aren't met. We might also see tariffs being strategically applied to key sectors to exert maximum economic pressure.
The strong stance suggests a real reluctance to back down once tariffs are in place. How might that impact trade disputes? Could it prolong them or make them harder to resolve?
It certainly carries that risk. a steadfast refusal to compromise could lead to protracted trade wars and retaliatory measures from other countries, ultimately harming all parties involved. However, from the perspective of the art of the deal, this unwavering stance might be seen as a way to project strength and ultimately achieve more favorable terms in the long run. It's a high-stakes gamble.
And those protection mechanisms, what might be some specific examples of those in the context of tariff policy?
Well, we might see specific tariff exemptions or reductions tied to certain conditions, such as commitments to purchase domestic goods or invest in U.S.-based production.
Interesting.
We might also see tariffs designed with built-in review periods or sunset clauses, allowing for adjustments or withdrawal if the desired outcomes aren't being achieved.
Sure.
The focus would be on ensuring that these tariff policies have a clear benefit for domestic industries and can be adapted if circumstances change.
It's so important to remember the 1987 context. You know, the booming real estate market he was operating in then allowed for a certain level of risk-taking.
That's right.
How does that compare to the much more interconnected and complex global economy of today? And how might that influence his tariff strategies?
That's a critical distinction. The ability to unilaterally impose terms or absorb economic consequences is likely more limited in today's globalized world. Tariffs can have far-reaching impacts on supply chains and consumer prices, and retaliatory measures can quickly escalate. While the underlying principles from the book might still guide his approach, the practical application needs to consider these interconnected realities.
Now, the book doesn't specifically talk about tariffs, but it does touch on the economic competition with Japan in the 80s, which has some parallels to current global economic anxieties. Does that give us any broader insights into how he might view tariffs as a tool to address these anxieties?
His general commentary at the time suggested a belief in protecting domestic industries from what he perceived as unfair competition. This aligns with the strong stance and protection mechanism principles. Tariffs could certainly be seen as a direct way to achieve that goal. To level the playing field, as it's often phrased, and encourage domestic production.
Finally, The Art of the Deal is known for its self-promotional style. How might that influence the way potential tariff policies are communicated and negotiated on the global stage?
That tendency to frame every deal as a personal victory could lead to a very assertive and potentially confrontational communication style in trade negotiations.
It might also mean a focus on quick, visible wins, such as the imposition of tariffs, even if the long-term economic consequences are more complex or less favorable.
So if we bring it all together, our deep dive into The Art of the Deal suggests that we might see future tariff policies characterized by ambitious initial proposals, the strategic use of pressure tactics, a strong and potentially inflexible stance, and a focus on protecting specific domestic interests. Understanding these core principles offers a valuable framework for analyzing potential trade decisions and the outcomes being sought.
It's crucial to remember that applying principles from a 1987 real estate book to the complexities of modern international trade has limitations. The global economic landscape is vastly different. And the effectiveness of these tactics in a multilateral setting can vary significantly.
However, the book does provide a window into a consistent mindset that has shaped Donald Trump's approach to negotiation throughout his career.
That's a vital caveat. But considering these principles, you know, thinking big with tariffs, applying pressure, through their imposition and the threat of more maintaining a strong stance, even in the face of opposition, and seeking protective measures for specific industries.
Sure.
What specific trade relationships or sectors do you, our listener, anticipate might be most impacted?
That's a great question for our listeners.
Are there historical instances beyond the U.S.-Japan trade dynamics of the 80s that might offer further clues about how these principles play out in the realm of tariffs? This exploration of the art of the deal provides a fascinating, albeit imperfect lens through which to observe and interpret future developments in international trade policy.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.